Today we'll be talking about multiple murder, school violence, and workplace violence. So what is multiple murder? A good definition of multiple murder from Bartol and Bartol 2014 is one of the most frightening and perhaps incomprehensible types of homicide, which include one episode, mass murders, or individually serial murders over a period of time. These are usually rare occurrences, which makes them so frightening and hard to comprehend. A couple examples of multiple murders is John Wayne Gacy. He planned and separate murders of 33 young men and boys whose bodies were found in the cellar of his suburban Chicago home. And Jeffrey Dahmer. He lured at least 17 boys and young men into his apartment in Milwaukee, where he drugged, killed, and dismembered them. So, defining serial murder. Incidents in which an individual or individuals kills two or more victims in separate events. This incorporates a cooling off period that makes it different from other multiple murders. This cooling off period, it's a time interval. The motives and causes of serial killers. So there is actually no single identifiable causal factor in the development of a serial killer. The motives of many serial killers appear to be based on some combination of psychological rewards rather than identifiable material gains. The psychological rewards include control, domination, media attention, and personal or sexual excitement. The actions are predictably planned, organized, and purposeful, which shows how long the killer has thought about all of this and how detailed his plans are. So, some common misconceptions are that serial murderers are seriously mentally disordered or emotionally disturbed. This is actually not the case. Yes, some are, but most are not. Another misconception is that serial killers are social misfits who have trouble fitting into the local community. So, mass murder. There's actually little research that has been directed towards mass murders. They happen pretty quickly and unpredictably without warning, and that and also the fact that they're not as intriguing or mysterious as serial murders is probably why there's little research done on them. Also, why is because it is often clear who the offender is because they'll kill themselves or are shot by the police after committing the crime. There are two types of mass murder that I mentioned earlier, which is classic mass murder and family mass murder. So, school violence. Violence in schools is included but not limited to aggravated and simple assaults, sexual assaults, and robbery. An example of this is the Columbine High School massacre, which will be talked about more in depth a couple slides down. The youth homicides occurring at school remains at less than 2% of the total number of youth homicides. School shootings and school bullying are two types of school violence that are seen often. Some statistics that prove this is that in 2009, 8% of students in grade 9 to 12 reported being threatened or injured with a weapon such as a gun, knife, or club on school property. Also in 2009, 6% of students ages 12 to 18 reported being cyberbullied. And then as of 2010, 828,000 students ages 12 to 18 reported being victims of school violence. School shootings and bullying. Most times these two things can go hand in hand. Two characteristics of school shooters is actually peer rejection and social rejection. So the school shooters have poor social and coping skills and feel picked on or persecuted. Their expressed anger about being teased or ridiculed and vowed revenge against particular individuals or groups. Cruelty to animals is actually prominent in the backgrounds of at least half of the shooters. Other research has been done with cruelty to animals being associated with psychopathy. And there are actually adults that are unaffiliated with the schools who also become involved in school shootings. Again, school shooters were often socially rejected and bullied. An example of this was, as stated earlier, the Columbine High School massacre is an example of school shootings. This took place on April 20th, 1999 in Colorado. The perpetrators were two senior students named Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. They kept detailed journals that described their plans for a headline bombing. The plan was so detailed it even discussed potential escape plans and how they would get away with the acts of violence. So the morning of the massacre, the boys set off a small bomb a few miles away from the school as a diversion. The diversion was used to get all emergency personnel far away from the school. The boys actually planted two bombs within the school cafeteria, but they didn't go off. And since the bombs didn't go off, they strapped themselves up with weapons and opened fire on the school. They ended up murdering one teacher and 12 students. At 12:08, the two boys in unison counted to three, 1, 2, 3, and then committed suicide. Another example of school shootings is a Sandy Hook shooting. This took place on December 14, 2010 in Newtown, Connecticut. Adam Lanza, he was the perpetrator. He fatally shot 20 children ages 7 and younger, along with some school employees. Before even going to the school, Adam had shot and killed his mother in her home. Adam shot his way into the building where a janitor tried to convince him to put the gun down. Afterward, he entered a first grade classroom and fatally shot a substitute teacher and 15 of her students. Now we'll move on to workplace violence. This usually means a worker killing his or her coworkers or supervisors, but an alternative to this is to refer to a wide range of aggressive actions: gossip, assaults, sexual assaults, robberies, and murders. It's actually very important to distinguish between workplace aggression and workplace violence, since there are differences, obviously. So workplace aggression can be defined as a general term encompassing all forms of behavior by which individuals attempt to harm others at work or their organizations. Workplace violence is incidents in which the offender intends to cause serious physical or bodily harm to an individual or individuals within an organization or to the organization itself. The highest workplace violence actually occurs for law enforcement officers, security guards, and bartenders, according to Herald 2011. When thinking about this makes sense considering law enforcement officers and security guards put themselves in that position where they know they could be going into crimes or encounter different violent acts. And then bartenders have to deal with people who are usually intoxicated, therefore causing more fights and making them more prone to violence. So there are actually 4 types of workplace offenders. Type 1 is no legitimate relationship to the workplace or the victim and usually enters the workplace to commit a criminal action. Common victims are small late-night retail establishments, including convenience stores and restaurants and taxi drivers. These can also include terrorists and hate crimes. Type 2 would be the recipient of some service provided by the victim or workplace. It may be either a current or former client, patient, or customer. Type 3, the person has an employment-related involvement with the workplace. An example of this, when death results from the violence, if the victim or victims were of higher authority than the perpetrator, the crime may be called. An example of workplace violence is the CBS affiliate WDBJ shooting. So this occurred on August 26, 2015, when Vester Flanagan II shot and murdered a news reporter and a photojournalist. He was fired from the station back in the year of 2013 for disruptive behavior. The 2 workers were live on the news when Vester came into the studio with his Glock pistol and opened fire. He first shot at photojournalist Adam Ward and then news reporter Allison Parker. Afterwards, he fled the scene. So that is all the information we have for you. Thank you for listening. Clearly, multiple murders, workplace violence, and school shootings are actually a lot more common than we want to believe or think. It's important to be educated on these topics and to start learning more about motives and bullying, especially if that is what drives the person to do what he or she does. Thank you.